Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fintech Combine. I am your host, Kris Kovacs, and this is the series where we talk with and sometimes about community-based institutions, their digital and business transformation projects, and we meet the innovators, entrepreneurs, and fintechs that make it all possible. On this episode, we're speaking with Frank Mazza, the Director of Blockchain for Credit Unions and CUSOs at Metallicus. So if you're ready, let's suit up and get out on the field. Frank, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have you back on the show. As I'm sure you know, your previous episode for Metallicus was one of our best episodes. There's groups clamoring for an update, so I'm excited to have you back on the show. It's good to see you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, if someone missed the first episode, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company, Metallicus?
Yeah, of course. So I've actually been at Metallicus for about 4 years now. And I focus primarily on working with our credit union, our fintech partners, as well as other CUSOs. So the one thing that, I like to just tell everyone when you think about Metallicus and who we are in this industry is that we are infrastructure. So we've built everything that we have. We have a number of different products in the market, from blockchain to digital asset wallets to consumer apps where you can buy and sell digital assets. We have our own decentralized exchanges, our own identity products. So we've built a lot of these tools. We have a lot of customization around it, the developers in-house that can make these things possible. So Metallic has been around for 10 years. So we're no stranger to the industry, both on the crypto side and also as on the credit union side. And we are a CUSO. So I think that's the most important thing to know. We acquired CU Ledger Bonify back in January of last year. And, we're excited to continue focusing on our efforts in the credit union space, as well as, the financial services space as a whole.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you guys you have a variety of products, right? You're wearing a hat for MetalPay. Why don't you walk us through a little bit about how your clients are using the Metallicus infrastructure and your products?
Of course, yeah. So our legacy product where we'll start is MetalPay. So MetalPay has been around for 10 years. And we have a number of money transmitter licenses where you can actually buy and sell digital assets in 48 states. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, any of the top currencies by market cap, realistically. This is really cool in where we're at in the state today, because, what Metallicus is really focused on with credit unions over the past few years has really been on, how do we take the technology that we have and how do we bring that to financial institutions? So obviously there's a position for the consumer app side for those that want to buy and sell digital assets, but how do we kind of use the B2B model? And what we've seen in market, which is really, really interesting, we launched an innovation program about 3 years ago, which a lot of people know about, the Metallicus Metal Blockchain Banking Innovation Program. And the whole reason we started that, and we talked about this in the last episode, was really to distinguish everything that has happened after FTX, distinguishing the difference between what is crypto, what is blockchain, what is stablecoin. And Metallicus is really stayed on that educational focus, making sure that we can provide this insight to those credit union executives to really understand what is happening in the market. We fast forward today and everything that's happened last year, in last June, almost a year ago, with the Genius Act and the passing, Metallicus was already prepped and ready. We've already built the technology to test out stablecoins, to deploy stablecoins. We've launched our own stablecoins throughout the market to be able to leverage for our users. So we basically said, hey, how do we kind of transition this space to now allow credit unions the opportunity to really understand what does that process look like? What does stablecoins mean? Where do you use them? What are the use cases? What does that process look like? What does the compliance aspects look like? So we launched this pilot program about a year ago, driven around stablecoins, really where it gives members the ability to kind of touch it, feel it, see it, hands-on experience with our technology, completely risk-free, using monopoly-style money to really be able to explore the stable coins for their credit union. Where we've seen that kind of position today, which is the most exciting, is we've seen, okay, credit unions are still learning, understanding what this means, how they use it, but what can they do now? Like, what can we do? We know that there's still a window that we're waiting for, whether that's from the NCUA, whether there's some guidance from the Clarity Act, from the PPSI licensing, that's going to be a requirement. So what can we do as an organization that credit unions say today? And that's what's exciting because we have Metal Pay. And that's the product that's been around. Metallicus is currently in the process of integrating to allow credit unions to have that digital banking experience built directly into their consumer app. So we're connecting to the big digital banking providers to be able to allow their members to buy and sell digital assets. But where that's even more valuable is this really preps them for the next step. And I think that's what's exciting, because when you think about, okay, well, stablecoin is going to be launched, and we're, ABC Credit Union, and we want to launch our own stablecoin. Where does it sit, right? Where is that going to be? How's my members going to use it? That's that wallet infrastructure that Metallicus has built that allows it to sit directly into their banking experience, whether that's masked as a digital dollar, whether that's going to be displayed as a stable coin for the credit union's dollar. It's all going to sit within that foundation. And that's what's really cool, is that we can do something today that is also providing great value today, but also going to be available to kind of help you in the future when stablecoins really start to kick off the market.
So if a credit union engages you to talk to you about adding a wallet to their digital services, does that wallet support both the ability to do stablecoins and to be able to purchase cryptocurrencies?
Yes. And that's, and I think right now what you'll find is, a lot of credit unions will say, well, we want to understand what a stable coin, is today with like USDC and Paxos, PYUSD. What does this look like in our environment? Do we want to make that available? But the reality is when you think about stable coins, you think about what is the real value here. The value is that if you back this by your own reserves and you're an institution, you not only get, the interest because it's not, underneath your umbrella, but what's really valuable when you think about it is that you have more of the, we don't use the word control in blockchain and the crypto industry, but customization. So what that means is when you start thinking about how is my money being moved, what are the insights behind this stable coin, whether it's going out, whether it's coming in, what are the additional smart contracts that you're putting into place to prevent fraud and other pieces. So this is really what the value right now is when you deploy a stable coin within the Metallicus ecosystem in our wallet, is that we can actually deploy your own custom stable coin within this wallet.
What's the when a credit union comes to you and starts to have this conversation, are they leaning with stablecoin, or are they starting to talk about crypto? Where's the typical starting point for a credit union?
It's a great question. I think the expectation would be in the market that we've had June of last year, and everyone got all of these 101s and these 201s, and everyone's doing it, right? And Metallicus included. I mean, I may talk to like 15 plus credit unions a week, give or take, So the expectation would be is for a lot of people on the outside would be, oh yeah, they're ready. Like they know what they're doing. I think we're still in a position where a lot of credit unions still don't know. And I think they're trying to understand, right? So you're kind of like, taking a step back to look for education is still very important in this stage. Being able to, not only educate, but really be able to display, how will these use cases come to light? What use cases will actually exist? Is the focus going to be around cross-border payments? I would love to say so. There's great reasons why cross-border is extremely valuable in stablecoins, and we lean into that. But there's a number of other use cases, that credit unions are looking for. I mean, I talked to one today that's like, hey, this is all great with stablecoins, but we really want the lending. And, so these are all different things that, credit unions are still trying to identify. They still want the 101s. They still want the 201s. But the common theme right now going into this year has been, okay, we know we don't want to be behind. So what can we do today? And that's kind of been really the biggest value for Metallicus is that we have technology. We have proven technology that's been around for 10 years that we could say, yeah, we can offer you a wallet that's been battle tested, wallet that has, that has licensing behind it to be able to facilitate money transfers or money movement. So this has really kind of been the exciting part of this. But to simply answer it is, everyone is still fairly early. You have your aggressive players, and we're working with a number of those that have a lot of that experience, have been doing the research. But the 101s and 201s, even in those organizations, are still happening.
Just to be sure, when you say 101s and 201s, you're talking like stablecoin 101, right? Yeah, crypto 201. You're talking about like the basic lessons that credit unions need. Okay. I mean, I didn't want people to think that was like there's a 101 requirement out there somewhere that I don't know about.
No, no. It's the it's the webinar, it's the 101, really to
Yeah.
understand what it is. And I think just the thing to know, like, you have your industry experts in the organizations and the credit unions that are pretty well versed. But where it becomes a challenge is that you can have a CTO or a CIO or even your chief digital officer, which typically are the ones that know a lot more in this space and are
Right.
comfortable and are using technologies, but because they know it doesn't mean that the board is ready to make that jump. So being able to
Good
make
point.
sure that they're getting the education is really important in this process, and really being able to explain how it works. And what's really great about Metallicus is we give them a tool that they can actually use. Say, hey, you know what? You don't understand it yet? Cool. Download MetalPay. Go use the MetalPay app. Make some transactions. Understand what the flow looks like. Guess what? You don't want to use your own real demo like this? We give you access to the sandbox, the pilot, where we give you access to our WebAuth wallet that has a sandbox environment that you can test stablecoins, you can test other forms of digital assets. So this is the really cool thing, is that we give the credit union every opportunity to really be able to learn, and then not just educate, the credit, but everyone below that as well as their members.
As you've worked with credit unions and helped frame that discussion with credit union boards, what are the drivers that people are really, using to make the case as to why this is so important? Right. So you talk with a chief digital officer who gets it, probably has a wallet. Hopefully it's a MetalPay wallet. Right. But, they're experienced with it. How do you approach a board, a credit union board, and say, this is why we need to pursue this new feature and service for our members?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think that what is known and has been accepted, where this year I'd say versus last year, is that credit unions executives and the boards know that it's happening. There's been enough market noise that they know that this is going to happen. I think where you have to get them to figure out is, now that we know that it's happening, what use cases are going to be the ones that accelerate us to do this? Is it cross border? We hear a lot often, where you'll say, well, guess what? Stable coins eliminate interchange fees. Well, credit unions make their money off of interchange. So as an organization, do you really want to eliminate your interchange fee? Not really. But whereas the value is that it's not about eliminating the interchange fee, it's about controlling the interchange fee. So when you deploy your own stablecoin, you have more control about what does that fee look like. You're getting to keep all of that within the organization. Your product team, your digital team, they're now able to create their own product, their own interchange. Say, okay, look, we know we're not going to, stable coins in 2026, 2027 is not replacing Zelle. It's not going to happen. Replacing Venmo anytime soon, probably not going to happen. But will it support those integrations? Will it create another alternative? Will it create a way that you can provide more benefits to your member, maybe by reducing fees? Maybe you're using something, which is one of my favorite, scenarios. And when I spoke to a credit union back a few months ago in person, was, what if we create a digital checking account that's basically powered by the stablecoin payment rails? So instead of having to pay monthly maintenance fees, if you have a digital checking account and all of your money sits in here that's powered by stablecoins, it's a feeless infrastructure for your member. Maybe we give them additional rewards. So there's a lot of things that we've talked about in terms of use cases, but it's really about, from the board's perspective, is being able to find something that is dominant in terms of their goals internally as a credit union, and being able to find a way to leverage that use case with it. If it is cross-border, which there are a lot of credit unions that focus on cross-border, as I mentioned earlier, lending today, was a conversation. It's like, hey, we would rather do lending today versus diving directly into something else. So it really depends on how they're positioning it.
I've always thought that one of the great use cases for stable coins is business transactions, right? And I don't necessarily mean kind of over the counter retail purchases, but if I'm paying contractors and supporters and, those kinds of things to be able to run my business, do credit unions give you enough of a foothold to get a sense for whether business is growing or whether there's real business-based opportunities? Or is their retail focus kind of really driving home those retail use cases? Is there a balance there, or do you see kind of one leaning more one way or the other?
No, I think we've originally looked from the Metallica standpoint is that the business use case for small business particularly is one of the more valuable for the
Yeah.
small business. I think that cross-border from an industry perspective has just kind of taken over that narrative because you've seen it from the bigger players in the market that
Hmm.
are emphasizing on that. And a lot of credit unions are leaning into that, as you start to go to these different conferences and you hear more about, oh, cross-border, this we start to ignore all those other use cases that bring benefits. But when you think
Hmm.
about small businesses, even me personally, my dad owned his own business for years from a small business
Hmm.
perspective. A number of family members, I've had my own in the past. You think about why it's important to your point to look at stablecoins as an option. Immediate payment, right? You get instant
Right.
cash flow. If you're looking to buy and sell goods to be able to continue to fund your business, waiting 2-3 weeks to get paid, it's not efficient. And actually
Right.
hurts the business more than it does in value. So adding stable coins is a way that people can pay them in real time. I mean, you think about
Hmm.
this, there's a reason why, a lot of small businesses prefer to accept Venmo over cash. It's because they
Right.
get the funds instantly. And if you can leverage that through a stable coin, it's the same benefit that we look at as, hey, let's create a use case that would allow that to be possible. But it's a great use case. It's actually one of my favorites. It's one of the first ones that we've pushed on. We've
Hmm.
just seen that the market has gravitated more around, obviously the cross-border piece, but
Right.
there's a number of use cases around stable coins that we've seen.
And the use case, just so that we catch everybody up, right? The real argument for a credit union to issue their own stable coin is this concept that they get to, hold the money regardless of which account it sits in, right? And they get to earn the interest off of it ultimately, right? Because they're holding the cash.
Yeah, and I'll say the comment that you'll hear from the industry as a whole. The narrative has traditionally been you're going to protect the outflow of deposits, right?
Well,
We're
that's true. Yeah.
and that's kind of like that's been the whole market narrative for the last year plus. What I like to challenge and what I challenge the credit unions, it's not just about the outflow; it's about the inflow. The inflow is just as
Mm,
important as the outflow. And when you think about the funds that are sitting in all these different wallets, whether they're in like the Coinbases, the Krakens, the Robinhoods, what we tend to forget is, what does that process look like in bringing those funds back to
mm,
the organization? And how are you bringing those funds back? Do you really want your
right.
member to wait 2, 3, 4 days for those funds to clear? Are there limitations that are going to restrict the amount of funds that you can actually move if you sell your digital assets? So when we think about stable coins, yes, of course, you want to make sure that when you're sending funds out, that you're holding on to that money as long as you possibly can. But what you also want to look at is, can you accept that? And I think that's really why we're starting to see this
Mm,
big shift in digital wallets going into this year, going into next year, is that credit unions and financial institutions as a whole are realizing we might have to start to sit on these assets, have a way for us to receive them. And when you say,
yeah.
well, I'm going to receive these assets, do I want to receive this asset as a PYUSD or USDC where I have no financial benefit on this,
Right.
or do I want to sit on them as and have it so they can sit as a stable coin so that I can have it sit on my on
Right.
my balance sheet. So these are the big questions that we always tell credit unions to ask.
Yeah, and as this market continues to mature and expand, it is such a pain in the butt to try to move and change, from dollars to USDC to metal pay. Like the difficulty of saying how am I going to get money from A to B, right? And we
Yep.
need to make that as smooth and easy as possible for it to go flow back to the credit unions.
Correct. And Metallicus has built actually the technology that allows that seamless movement. So not only are we fully interoperable with our blockchains, but we also have what's called a stablecoin basket. And I won't
Hmm.
complicate it and confuse it for most of the audience. But in simple terms, what we're able to do is that we move out one to one. So if you want to say move money into say PayPal as PYUSD, for example,
Hmm.
we take your stablecoin and it's a seamless experience that you can now move one, credit union dollar into PYUSD where it sits in that PayPal app, and then we can reverse it. So when you start to bring back those funds and you want to bring PYUSD back into your digital wallet, we can then do that swap behind the scenes so that when that money comes back in, it's now sitting as a digital dollar again. So there's no gap in terms of how long those funds are
That's
actually
good.
sitting there.
That's a really unique and important feature. What's the advantage for the consumer of using a stable coin issued by their credit union?
So great question. And we talk a lot to the credit unions about, is it better to issue your own stable coin, or does it make more sense to join a consortium? Right. We like to say that there's no right or wrong answer. It really comes down to, how much work and does it take? What are the resources that the credit union has to be a part of it? But from a member experience, it's really on how you market it and you position it. So if you're looking at it from a, as I mentioned earlier, of, a digital checking account, right? Your member may have no idea they're actually even using a stable coin. Think about when you go to Starbucks today and you reload your Starbucks app, right? You're using your checking or savings account. You're moving money that's now sitting inside the Starbucks application. It's now stuck, right? That use case is actually very similar to how the stablecoin works. The only difference is that with a stablecoin, you can actually take those funds and move it anywhere else. And when you think about the other wallets and where the future is, Walmart's looking at stablecoins, Amazon is looking at stablecoins. You want to make sure that when you're deploying a stablecoin, if you are moving that money, you can move it back and forth. So that interoperability. Yeah. But from a member's experience, it's really going to be on how do you want to position it? Do you want your member to know that you're going to have them hold, credit union dollar? Or do you want them to not know and just say, hey, we're using a payment rail. You'll have no idea the difference. We're going to create these fun programs, rewards based out of, those using stable coins. Think of like we have ACH and wires that have fees associated with it. Maybe you're saying, hey, if you use ACH Pro or Wire Pro, there's no fees to it, and that's using a stablecoin rail. So it really is going to depend on how you market, position the product. It really gives the credit unions and their team the ability to really freely think about, what are different things that we can do to be creative. The same way that, credit unions have created products and planning before, just now using it with a different form of payment.
And your infrastructure gives the ability to seamlessly move between those different types of coins and payment types as well. So that's super powerful.
Yeah, we're fully interoperable, within the ecosystem.
Are there, if you look in the future, are there existing payment rails? Are there existing payment services that you think will be sunset with stablecoins?
That's a good question. And that's, so we hear that, we get asked this question a lot, is what will it replace? I don't know if anytime soon it will fully replace any of these other solutions. I think right now it's primarily going to be just showcased more as an alternative, a really good alternative, right? And that's not to devalue it, because obviously stablecoins have a ton of benefits. When you think about, why am I going to leverage a stable coin? What are my additional benefits? Well, just think of it from the Metallicus ecosystem. We have two different blockchains that we're looking at in deploying stable coins. We have XPR Network and we have Metal Blockchain. When you think about XPR Network, the cost of that is a half percent per transaction. When you're looking at Metal Blockchain, which is where a lot of the credit unions are leaning in terms of that deployment, the cost of that, if you deploy your own subnet, is 0 per transaction. So when you think about that from if I'm a credit union and I'm looking to deploy a solution, I'm looking to deploy a new payment rail, I like the idea that it's not costing me anything, that I can add my own fees. Not to mention that it's a lot faster. It's interoperable. I can exchange to any other, institution that's accepting it. So I think that it is a strong alternative. I don't think anything will replace it. Could it in the long run, outweigh some of these other payment systems? Of course. I mean, we're a firm believer. I'm biased, so it's a little bit hard for me to make that statement against it. But stable coins definitely, I think the kind of just the last piece on that we hear often a lot is, will there be 1,000 or 4,000 credit union stablecoins? A lot of people you'll hear it say, no, never. From the Metallicus, from my standpoint, I do think there will be 4,000 stablecoins. I think that those 4,000 stablecoins may not be publicly shown, but I think it's not stablecoin. It's not the coin. It's the rail. I think there will be 4,000 payment rails that are leveraging the stablecoin technology, whether that is their own stablecoin, whether that is a consortium stablecoin. There is so many reasons to use a stablecoin as a payment rail: speed, cost, efficiency. You think about the regulation behind it, the governance behind it, the smart contracts to preventing of the fraud. So yes, there will be at some point 4,000 credit unions likely using stablecoins, maybe having their own variation of it, but directly replacing any of the other systems and sunsetting them, it could, but I wouldn't. I'm also a realist.
People still write checks, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of where exactly. That's how I look at it. You're still going to use it, replace it, a good alternative. So that would be kind of where I see it.
As part of the Metal blockchain, you guys have an infrastructure that can provide all kinds of services, right? Are there other products you're currently looking at, or other opportunities you're currently evaluating to extend that blockchain into? For example, tokenization. Are you looking at those other potential use cases as a part of this, or is the opportunity so large at credit unions that for stablecoin that's just taking all of the air out of the room at this time?
Yeah, no. Stablecoins is just a small piece. It's a very small piece to what Metallicus does in the ecosystem. I think that from a credit union perspective, the reason why we would get more recognition around the stablecoins is just because of the nature of the FOMO in the market. Obviously, a lot of what's happening with credit unions, with the Genius Act, with the Clarity Act, with the licensing, with a credit union. When you look at Metallicus, you might say, oh, is there just a stable coin there? But, that's kind of where we dive into, a lot of the other products. And we get into that when we're working with credit unions. The wallet play is a very big one, which, obviously a lot of it is connected. Identity is a very big piece of one. Fraud solutions, being able to put different components on chain. We've talked to credit unions about titles on chain. Is that an option? The lending pieces that we've talked about, earlier in this episode. So there's a lot of different use cases that you can build around it. Opportunity wise, it's really endless because of the ecosystem, being able to have us directly associated with us as a core developer, to be able to work with those credit unions, to be able to customize those. So really the endless options in what we're doing. We are working with some other credit unions in experimentation phases that really allow them to see use cases that go a little beyond that. But there's a number of things that you can do. Stablecoins is just a very small piece to what we do at Metallicus.
One of the challenges with really ubiquitous and quick money transfer services is, in fact, the potential for fraud. What are you guys doing to combat that potential inside your platform?
Yeah, so Metallicus has its own, our own identity products. We have Metal Identity. It's a product that we've been working on. Obviously, we have experience in the identity space when you think about acquisition of CU Ledger and the identity products that they've had with it, and how we're transforming some of those products internally at Metallicus. Anytime you put data on chain, the infinite and immutable records is really valuable, especially to credit unions. When you think about the auditing perspective, how do you manage that on chain? Obviously, with those records always sitting there, how do you really start to showcase and elevate in this scenario? Creating those smart contracts on chain that say, hey, if this, then do this, right? So there's a lot of things that we're looking at from a fraud perspective to combat some of that, being on chain. Same thing when you think about, potential of like a title on chain that we might have talked about with a credit union. You start to get into that, the historical records behind that. What does the title movement look like? So there's a number of use cases that kind of tie in beyond that, and especially kind of go together with the fraud and the prevention of that.
It sounds like with so many connections that you guys are really like wiring in a number of partners, right? How do you guys work with partners to be able to facilitate some of these great experiences that you're building?
Yeah, so I think the big thing is Metallicus is a great team. I think that's kind of
Mm.
the one thing that, if I can emphasize more than anything here is that, everyone here of Metallicus, top to bottom, is really, really eager to transform the industry payments. And, from our CEO, Marshall Hayner, who's been doing this as long as I even knew what crypto was, right? So
Hmm.
being one of the early, on the Doge Foundation now, and an early employee of Doge, he's like a day oneer in this industry. And you kind of take, not just him, but the engineers, the product, the team. We've been able to really be able to work closely with these credit unions and their teams to really be able to understand where they're at, where they're positioned, really be able to kind of dive in and understand it. So as we kind of started, we've never seen it as a problem to grow and to have
Hmm.
more credit unions and more partners. And, the team has been continuously been able to adapt internally, whether that's from the project management standpoint to your senior engineer, your junior engineer. So we've been able to really kind of emphasize the team aspect of this. That's been able to really kind of work alongside the credit unions, understand the industry. And I say credit unions, but it's all financial services as a whole of what
Hmm.
we're doing. And there's obviously other products that Metallicus has that go outside of just the credit unions. As I mentioned, MetalPay being one that is
Hmm.
consumer driven. So customer service, customer support, being able to take the data, the insights that you have from the different products to kind of educate your staff, your team through these pilots. Not to mention the credit unions themselves have been a huge advocate of Metallicus.
Hmm.
Think of one in St. Cloud. I mean, St. Cloud's a huge advocate, a great partner of Metallicus.
Yeah.
Being able to have their support through the process. If we need them to kind of help, drive more insight onto, what you can do with stablecoins, how they've gone about regulation and things that they're working on. So we have got a lot of support from the credit unions as well as the team here. But being able to grow and expand, it comes with a great team, but it also comes with great partners and other credit unions. And the biggest value when you think about a credit union versus me coming from the community banking side is the collaboration, right? When you work in
Hmm.
community banking, the last thing that you want to do is talk to another community bank. They're your enemy, right? With
Right.
with a credit union, we're friends, right? We're all at the same conferences. We're all talking to each other. We're all texting each other. Everyone knows everyone. You want each other to succeed. Obviously, you want your credit union to develop, but in order for you to grow, and when you think about getting more credit unions, getting more industry adoption,
Mm.
it starts with the credit unions. And the more power and the more collaboration these credit unions have, the better the opportunity that we have as an industry to really be able to develop.
What's the reception you're getting from, say, digital banking providers and cores as credit unions are, kind of introducing you and saying, "Hey, we're really interested in this. Can you guys work together?" What's the experience you're getting from them?
Awesome. So yeah, so we have relationships with cores and digital banking providers, but where Metallicus really can accelerate in the market is that we have integration partners that can allow us to actually deploy a lot quicker.
Hmm. Okay.
So with those solutions, and as we work with some of these integration partners, it actually allows us to do that connectivity. They've already done a lot of the work. When we think about the member pass days with CU Ledger, being able to have that connectivity, the relationships that they've built,
Hmm.
understanding, where things are going from an on-chain perspective to now to transform to the products. Yes, they're obviously different products. They're at different ecosystems, but really being able to understand our technology. So we have been very fortunate that we have
Good.
partners that understand our APIs that have been able to start some of those deployments of which we're doing now with different digital banking and core providers. And it's really been able to allow us to kind of accelerate and have a really smooth way to do these integrations.
That's great. That's great. If Frank, thanks so much for joining us. If a credit union is interested in learning more about Metallicus, MetalPay, and the wallet and stablecoin offering that you have, how do they reach out to you? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so there's two ways to do it. If you're already working with a credit union league, I think the best way is to go to that credit union league and have that conversation on, how do you get involved with Metallicus? Most likely, if you're working with a credit union league, there's a number of benefits that are already coming with it from a pricing perspective, from an education perspective. So I would say one way, and the most common would be to go directly to the credit union league. Our partners today are Go West, Cornerstone, Cross State, who's a newer one, our legacy, MDDC. So we have a number of these credit union league partners. I'd say one of the first ways to do it is to go directly to the league. And then also you can always reach out to me directly. I answer every email. You can LinkedIn me. You can send me an email. You can go on our website and fill out forms. But always eager to talk to credit unions. Even if it's an early stage conversation, there's no conversation that's going to be too early.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Dude, thank you very much for joining us. We will see you again because I'm sure we're going to get an update next year as well. It's good to see you, Frank.
Awesome. Thanks, Kris.
What a great conversation with Frank. Thanks for coming back and joining us. If you like this content, please like and subscribe on your platform of choice. Thank you for being here. We will see you next time.